Today on the official Marvel podcast, we'll hear from Marvel Studios' executive creative director and production illustrator, Ryan Meinerding, as he recounts designing the look of the Fantastic Four for the MCU.
There's a lot of really visually interesting things that happened in the 60s. From fashion design to the space race to, the birth of the idea of an astronaut, right? I think we were looking at all of that stuff.
Plus, we hear from President of Trading Cards for Fanatics Collectibles David Leiner on what fans can expect from the 2025 Topps Chrome Marvel launch.
We're really trying to tell the story of Marvel via trading cards. So we're off to a good start, and I hope we're delighting fans of the Marvel Universe.
And we'll chat with Marvel Comics writer Benjamin Percy as he shares the latest on Frank Castle's return in the all-new Punisher Red Band #1.
We're honoring legacy, but also opening up this whole new chapter for him.
I'm Langston Belton.
I'm Victoria Yang.
And this is the official Marvel podcast.
Ryan Meinerding is the executive creative director and production illustrator for Marvel Studios. He's had a hand in shaping the MCU from the very beginning, from his work on films like Marvel Studios' Iron Man to the most recent release from Marvel Studios, The Fantastic Four: First Steps.
Yes, and as head of visual development, Ryan is tasked with creating the designs of your favorite on-screen heroes. Recently, Ryan shared his approach to character design, including what he looks for first when bringing a new character to the screen.
There are differences with every character, but there's also a great deal of similarities. I think we end up looking at the comics as a starting point. We got to understand what the icon is. We got to understand what are the main features that if we hit just those 5 things, comics fans will be happy and it'll feel like we're actually achieving the look of that character. But getting into the specifics of the story world, getting into the specifics of the setting, what's going to be the version that's going to pull from the comics, but also be its own thing. It's one of the best parts of this job is the stories are so specific and the characters are so great and iconic that you can really use a lot of those specifics to tell the story with the costumes. So going back through Captain America's costumes, Iron Man costumes, Spider-Man's costumes, we're always looking for ways that we can make those visuals unique to that story and help elucidate that character's journey.
When it came to drafting the Fantastic Four, Ryan says that there were several designs from the comics that he and his team considered. Here's how Ryan decided on the final look for the first family.
There's the blue and white version, there's the blue and black version, there's different versions with the Thing, with, just wearing trunks, wearing long pants, whether he's shirtless or he's got some kind of tank top on. They've done some crazy things with Johnny's costume. I think, for me, the notion of making those characters feel real in a new way was also one of the best parts of it. We've done so many costumes for different suits, different power suits, different sets of armors, different tactical characters. I think one of the best parts about this project is starting in the 60s, an era that created the space race, created a whole sense of inspiration for the future. Looking at those types of more spacesuit, more the idea of adventurers going out into space to observe or become, just to explore. When we were looking at different things we could be inspired by in the 60s, there's a lot of really visually interesting things that happened in the 60s. From fashion design to the space race to, the birth of the idea of an astronaut, right? I think we were looking at all of that stuff. We're trying to create something that feels bold and graphic in the same way that the comics costumes are, but also to keep that simplicity more than we ever have in some ways.
And while they are a team and their costumes do match, you'll notice that each member of the Fantastic Four is wearing a suit that is unique to them.
That idea actually came out of the fact that their powers are so different. So the idea of Reed building suits to match what they need with their different power sets. So if Reed has intense, stretchy capabilities, like what does the suit look like and how does that differ from Johnny's suit, which is obviously need to be like combustible but incombustible at the same time, and Sue's powers being different, having 2 sets of powers, like having that sort of filter through the costume is also, it just led us down a road of maybe these suits from a distance look the same, like the color breakups are the same, it generally looks the same, but when you get close that they are made of different things, or there's something unique about each one that allows us to make sure that they really feel different.
Bringing our favorite heroes to the big screen doesn't just start and end with the costumes. Ryan also has to make sure that a hero's powers translate on screen. Here's Ryan on how he and his team managed to bring Mr. Fantastic's stretching abilities to life.
Reed stretching has been one of the major challenges of this film, and trying to find a way to make it work so that his action moments feel compelling, interesting, and powerful, as opposed to going down a road of them feeling a little bit silly or goofy. In the comics, some of the most compelling frames are when he goes into sort of a ribbon mode, or, you know, his arms get a little noodly. But it's all stuff that wouldn't work in live action. So I was more looking at, how do we stretch him so that he keeps some anatomy? How do we keep hard points, like the corner of an elbow or his wrist, the bone, you know, the bone at your wrist? Like if I'm doing figure drawing, I know those landmarks that are going to make somebody's stance feel really solid and strong. How do we keep those landmarks even though he's stretching? And then once we have those landmarks, have the costume, whatever the costume design is, stretch over those things. Because in a lot of stuff in the comics, and there's a lot of stuff in the previous films, his arm and his costume stretches as one thing. And the notion of the costume is incredibly stretchy to allow him to do the things he's going to do, but I think the costume also has to stretch differently than his arm, so that you can actually feel the fabric sort of giving and slipping and moving in ways that you would expect if it was stretched to that great length. And we really got into treating him as like a spring-loaded weapon, that a lot of his stretching is down to using kinetic energy that he can sort of bring back and then release, and turn him into, you know, when he's fighting or when he's delivering punches or blows, that he's not like stretching an arm and his wrist is this thin when it actually connects. It's that he's like pulling himself forward on a desk to generate potential energy, then releases himself and ends up headbutting somebody. So it's we've turned him into hopefully a pretty kinetic, fun, dynamic character.
For the Invisible Woman, Ryan started her design by focusing on her force field abilities. And surprisingly, Ryan actually turned to his grandmother for some inspiration.
One of the easiest ways we end up solving problems is to just find a metaphor or analogy for something that is in the real world that we could apply to it. And for me, I grew up with my grandma having all these like really great paperweights that are blown glass with all kinds of amazing details inside. And I always looked at those things and thought they were gorgeous, but they're also so heavy and so solid. And the idea of basing some of Sue's powers in that sort of vibe, where you're not looking at a bubble, you're looking at something that is incredibly solid, has a lot of refracted light that goes through it. So you understand that this thing is powerful and strong. Her shields are not entirely visible. They only sort of come across when things contact them. And there's more of a vibrating, like energetic quality to them. Almost like the red-blue 3D glasses and those things becoming offset and sort of vibrating against each other. So you could get some really cool 60s strong color mod sort of stylings, but also make it feel dynamic and kinetic in that it doesn't really sit still. It's always moving, and she's able to control it and move it in compelling ways.
Designing the Human Torch comes with its own set of very unique challenges, specifically balancing out the hero's flamed-on appearance with his more everyday look. To do this, Ryan turned to the original comics designs by artist Jack Kirby.
In older versions of the Torch, because he was entirely red, Jack would draw a lot of like hatch mark lines to just basically communicate his form, so that there'll be line work in the costume that's baked in that you won't realize that when he flames on, it's going to still stay there and communicate that stuff. So for me, I'm trying to reverse engineer what line work is going to be on that suit. So when we do the fire version of him, all the stuff is there so that it's going to work for that idea. But additionally, it's just painting fire, like the actual technical challenges of making fire look real, and so that people believe the character is real. It's a much different thing than trying to sculpt rock or paint somebody's face. So that sadly is one of those challenges that doesn't go away. Every time you're going to draw or paint him, you got to make that fire look real.
And finally, the last member of the Fantastic Four was the one Ryan was looking forward to the most, Ben Grimm, aka The Thing.
The Thing for me is probably one of the best designed characters in Marvel Comics. Jack Kirby was an amazing designer, did so many iconic characters. The Thing is probably my favorite character he's designed for so many reasons. And if you look back at the comic history of him, most of the times when you look at comic history of characters, there's notable moments that the character changes. They'll get a new costume, a new person's drawing them, something like that. But in that first run that Jack Kirby did, the Thing gradually changes the entire run. He's basically redesigning him almost every time he draws him. And the notion of looking at that and seeing where he started and where he ended is incredible, because over that span of time, he was able to refine and refine and refine to create something that is a very simplistic, very straightforward, very iconic design, but had not been seen in comics up until that point either. So when trying to find a place to take that character in live action, there are things that you have to do with that design. You have to make him with a tiny nose. You have to give him a giant brow. You have to find a way that he can move his head without having a neck, really. One of the other things that Jack Kirby did was he broke up the rocks in ways that were sometimes, hexagons, sometimes octagons, sometimes, but it would almost look like a rock formation that, was naturally derived, but a very strange crystalline structure that created these really awesome dark shadows. And I think I've been trying to keep to that scale as much as possible, because he didn't go in there and break up with little tiny rocks. So I'm trying to figure out how we can have the plates all sort of slide over each other as much as possible. So there is ways that he can move.
You can check out Ryan's designs in action in Marvel Studios' The Fantastic Four: First Steps, only in theaters.
Langston, you are definitely the type of person I think might collect Marvel cards. Is that true?
You read right. Yes, I did. I had a numerous binders full of those plastic sheets designed for trading cards, and I would bring them to school to show how cool I was to all the other cool kids.
Definitely the coolest kid on the playground.
I'd like to think so, yes.
Well, fellow cool kid and official Marvel podcast co-host Sade Spence recently spoke with president of trading cards for Fanatics Collectibles David Leiner. Let's take a listen to what fans can expect from the 2025 Topps Chrome Marvel launch.
I'm joined by the president of trading cards for Fanatics Collectibles. He leads and directs Topps business strategy and operations. David Leiner, thanks for being on the podcast. Can you tell our listeners what you do?
Yeah, sure. I'm the president of the trading card group at Fanatics Collectibles. So in my role, I really oversee all of our product. I oversee our commercial strategy, so a lot of the sales strategy, all of our licensing, and our operations team, so how we manufacture all the cards. So those are my core responsibilities, and I do that on a global basis. My childhood was full of Topps. I was a big collector in the late 80s, early 90s. I absolutely love trading cards, love collectibles. So it's very fitting that my career led me to Topps also.
And what was your first position when you started at Topps, and how did you end up in your current position?
I started off in the finance group, but then very quickly finance, I got into operations, I got into customer service, I got into our talent licensing department. So I started growing my career within the company, getting promoted from within, taking on more and more responsibilities. And really by late 2015, early 2016, I took over running all of our North American sports and entertainment group. And then 2 years later, late 2017, early 2018, I took over running the global sports and entertainment business for Topps. By late 2017, early 2018, I was running the global group.
And so what would you say is the best part of your job?
I think it's talking to collectors. I learned so much. I'm a sponge. I ask a million questions. So that's, I think, the best part of my job is getting out there and talking to people.
Can you talk about the relationship between Marvel and Topps? I believe it began in 1976 with a Marvel sticker set.
Yeah, our first official product or collaboration was in 1975, 1976. We did a superheroes sticker set. It was just that 1 year. It was the superheroes of the time, a very simple, basic sticker product. And then, now our relationship, we had some small Marvel rights here and there, but the really big Marvel partnership started Jan 1 of 2025. So now we are fully licensed globally, and we can tap into the rich world of Marvel, and we're going to bring a lot to collectors and fans. There's so many cool ways to collect, so that's what we're up to.
Awesome. And so for the listeners who are not familiar with Topps Chrome cards, can you tell us about the Marvel Comics Chrome set?
It's a pretty big set. So the base set, so the way we construct sets are there's a base set and then we have various inserts that you can chase. So the base set is 200 characters from the publishing world. So very deep, very rich. And then we have different insert sets that you can collect. So those inserts fall a couple per box, have different levels of scarcity. But really what we try to do with this product is give collectors a great way to different collecting journeys, different ways to collect. But we're really trying to tell the story of Marvel via trading cards, right? So that's what we're trying to do and delight fans. People are loving this product. So we're off to a good start, and I hope we're delighting fans of the Marvel Universe.
For those who want to get into it, which Marvel characters are included that you can tell them about, and maybe even touch a little bit on some of those inserts you mentioned?
So there's 200 different Marvel characters. I mean, I'm partial to, I like Wolverine. Of course, you got Spider-Man. You got a lot of the iconic characters in there. So yeah, it's a pretty deep checklist. And the full checklist is available online so folks can see, are their favorite characters available in there. In terms of the inserts, I would tell you one I think is really cool is a Reflections insert. So we actually worked with some of the Marvel artists to commission bespoke pieces of art that we transformed into trading cards. And these are pretty, what we call big hits. So big chase elements of the product. These Reflections inserts fall about 1 in every 12 boxes. And there's 5 different subjects in Reflections. I think the artwork, it speaks for itself. It's so special. It's such a big part of Marvel publishing. I think that's a terrific insert.
We've got a list of some of the inserts here that maybe you can speak to a little bit. There's X-Men Giant Size 50th Anniversary, Future Stars, Marvel Icons, Marvel Anniversaries, and the New Avengers 20th Anniversary cards.
I think a lot of these inserts, what we're trying to do is really celebrate a lot of the history and the heritage of the Marvel universe, but also keep things fresh and interesting. So, but yeah, take X-Men. Yeah, it's the 50th anniversary of the X-Men. So we've created special chase cards that capture that anniversary. Anniversaries are a really big thing in our business. So we have different insert sets to capture, the 20th of the Avengers, the 50th of the X-Men Giant. So these are special chase cards, again, that they're scarcer. They fall less frequently in the packs. These are fun elements that folks can go out there and chase alongside the base set.
And Marvel Chrome 2025 also includes shadow box cards. So for those who are also new to this hobby, can you explain what a shadow box card is?
These are really thick cards that we've created that add a lot of depth. The cards are, they're stunning. They're really beautiful looking cards. They're acetate cards, plastic, and they're, I want to say almost a centimeter thick. These are elements, chases that collectors really cherish and go after. So that's what those shadow boxes are. They're thick cards. They show a lot of depth, and they're layered so that you get it's a 3-dimensional feel. They're rare. They're tough to find. But if you do, they're really fun.
Can you talk a little bit about in the process of designing a Marvel Chrome card? How long does it usually take to design a new set? And, is there a favorite part of this creative process as well?
I love the design part of what we do. I think when you go and you look back at our heritage, I'm in Chicago, I'm at this big convention, and when you can walk around the show and be like, oh, yeah, that's the 1952 Topps design. Oh, yeah, I remember 1986. Or I think the design is so special and so unique and can be so cherished. So we spend a lot of time on design. So the design of the cards, it really starts with the base set. We come up with what that base design is going to look like. And then a lot of the elements kind of play off of the base design when we look at the insert sets and how we do those. But it all starts with that base design, right? That's what people are going to open. And that's going to be the first impression. When you first open that pack of cards, or, today when we're marketing it and you see it on social, everyone's going to talk about that base design. So we spend a lot of time building not just the base designs, but the inserts. And then, of course, we work with the team at Marvel to kick ideas back and forth. They have style guides. They want a certain look and feel for how things are going to come together. We know our fans. We know our collectors. So it's a really fun, iterative process that we go through. But the design process it's always several weeks and can take up to several months. We want to make sure we get this stuff right in these sets, and anything that we put out into the marketplace, we want it to be great. But that design process is quite intensive, so that you build the frames, and then of course you start populating the frames, the designs with all the characters and the storytelling and text on the backs of the cards. So you design the fronts, you design the backs, and then you pull it all together as you build the subject list and you pick who's going to be featured in one set versus another.
Can you share any details about the 2025 Topps Chrome Marvel launch?
Yeah, so on the cinematic side, we have a big launch coming a little bit later this year. We're not sharing a ton of details about that release, but I think folks thus far are loving what we're doing on the publishing side. So the cinematic product that we're going to release later this year, we're keeping kind of coy on all the details there, but I think it's really going to deliver for fans. I think it's a lot of fun chase elements. We're carrying some things over from the publishing side, but I think we have some really unique hooks and collecting journeys for folks to chase. So stay tuned.
Thank you so much, David, for taking the time to chat with us today. I feel like I learned so much about the cards, and it just makes it that much more interesting to take a look and check them out.
Thank you for hosting. This was super fun.
A few years ago, the Marvel Comics universe said goodbye to Frank Castle in a Punisher story to end all Punisher stories. However, if you're a comic book reader, you already know that no end is truly permanent.
So very true. And now Frank Castle is back after a 2-year hiatus in the all-new Punisher Red Band issue number 1. And if you're wondering to yourself, wait a minute, how is he back? Well, that's something that even Frank Castle would struggle to answer. But lucky for us, friend and fellow official Marvel podcast co-host Evan Narciss got a chance to explore this new Punisher chapter with the series writer Benjamin Percy. And while he couldn't spoil the reveal, he did share a lot of details about the new comic. Check it out.
We're here talking to Ben Percy, the writer of the upcoming Punisher Red Band series. Ben, it's been a little while since we've seen Frank Castle, aka the Punisher. Where's he been? And can you describe to us the status quo that Frank was leaving? Where was he the last time we saw him? And kind of where we meet him as this issue opens.
Yeah, the last we saw the Punisher, he was in Weird World. Jason Aaron wrote a groundbreaking run, and moving on from that, we are establishing this new normal in which Frank Castle is in a Jason Bourne scenario. He wakes up on the deck of a burning boat in New York Harbor. The police are streaming toward him. He's surrounded by bodies. He's riddled with bullets himself. The hold of the ship is full of fentanyl, and he's on the run from there. He doesn't remember his name. He doesn't remember his history. What he does remember is how to block a knife jab, or break an arm, or smash a skull, or pop a fresh clip into an Uzi. So he's on the run and piecing together this mystery as to these new circumstances along with the audience.
So this is a Punisher who's running on pure instinct, and he's just as in the dark as the reader is, presumably.
That's right. This is a raw, primal self, like the reptilian brain of the Punisher is there, but that larger sense of self, that larger knowledge of the scars he carries from his past, all of that for the moment is absent. So he's a running man, and we're running alongside him, and it's pure adrenaline and nonstop action as we kick off this arc.
Right. So Red Band series from Marvel are a relatively new phenomenon. And while the Punisher has always been one of the more extreme characters in the Marvel Comics universe, what opportunity does the Red Band context afford you that you wouldn't necessarily have writing the story in a different context?
I've been gunning to write the Punisher, you could say, for many years.
I see what you did there.
That's right. Anyways, I've been gunning to write Frank Castle for some time. And I say Frank Castle specifically because it had to be him, and it had to be him back in black, right? He wears the skull upon his chest, and that skull is representative of the death inflicted upon him and the death he inflicts upon the world. That's our focus. We're honoring legacy, but also opening up this whole new chapter for him. If there's any character in the Marvel sandbox who deserves a Red Band rating, Frank Castle demands it. You know, this story is going to be hard as steel. It's going to be bloody as hell. And what the Red Band allows is for us to go hard R. We don't look away from the violence. We don't look away from extreme circumstances. So be prepared. This book is not going to pull its punches.
You say you were gunning to write Frank for a while. Why is that? What is it about the Punisher as a concept that drew you in? Let's dig into your relationship with him and wanting to write him.
Sure. I mean, it's a strange sort of thing that I've been a fan of Frank Castle since I was in 4th, 5th grade. What does that say about me as a child that I related to this dark-hearted vigilante? I don't know. nothing good probably. But I related to him. I related to other characters like Wolverine and Conan, in part, I think, because they were nomadic, but they always seemed completely at home with themselves. And they had a code, no matter how problematic, that drove them forward. And as somebody who was constantly moving as a kid, always in a new school, always in a new zip code, that felt like a constancy that I wanted for myself. And so when I think of like my siloed interests as a collector from childhood onward, it was always Frank, it was always Wolverine, Ghost Rider, Conan. There's maybe some connective tissue there in that, you know, I specialize now in all the hairy psychopaths. That's my genre, hairy psychopaths. That was actually one of my early notes, too, on the character design. I'm like, Frank has to have knuckle hair and back hair. Every inch of this guy is covered in hair. And it captures that bestial quality, right? The brutality that you just see in his physique. He's animalistic. He's coming for you. I like to see myself represented, you know? Just like more back hair in comics, please.
For all your hirsute heroics, come to Benjamin Percy.
That's right. I need a Sasquatch solo run.
Yes, let's bring Walter Langowski back just for your old proclivities. So we talked about the main heroic protagonist of this series. Let's talk about the person who seemingly is going to be the villainous antagonist here. Let's talk about the Kingpin. He seems like he's got a pretty significant role in your series. Can you talk about how he's involved?
I can say a little bit about how he's involved. He plays a central role. I've always wanted to write a Kingpin story. And I don't like mustache-twirling villains who are capital E evil. Kingpin has a code, and he's following this code. And what he's up to, which you'll soon learn about, by issue 2, things will be coming together. He is running both alongside Frank and ramming right up against him. That's all I'll say about that. But there's other so-called villains in this as well, and Tombstone is going to play a major role in the carnage and mayhem that is affecting New York.
Yeah, let's talk about the underworld ecosystem that you're going to be presenting in the book. You mentioned Tombstone. Are there other criminal factions that we're going to see come into play?
There will be appearances by the Tracksuit Mafia, by the Inner
Bro,
Demons.
Bro? We in this, bro?
What? Yes, bro. And a few others that Julius and I are creating. But the idea is that things are about to boil over, and Frank is caught up in the middle of it all.
So you just mentioned Julius. For anybody listening who doesn't know, that's Julius Ota, the artist on this series. And you worked with him before on Helverine. So What is different here? They're both kind of violent characters who solve their problems with a lot of personal injury to their opponents. But what's different with working on Julius here versus the previous time you guys have partnered up?
We had a great time collaborating. He's fantastic at creating, just like a heightened reality in his work, and adrenaline-fueled dynamic action, but also like soulful characterization. And if you read Helverine, the mini that we did together, maybe you'll recall that horrifying moment when a character is their face is drawn towards a speeding motorcycle's spokes, the spokes of the wheel. Their hair gets tangled up into it, and a kind of garbage disposal moment follows where there's a lot of splatter, windborne splatter taking to the air. That moment alone gives you some insight into what we're going to be doing here. I actually have to, many times in every script, apologize to Julius because I'm making him go to some really dark places. But man, he is absolutely killing it. Absolutely and literally killing it.
Yeah, we're not cutting away from anything in this series, it seems like. It's all going to be on the page.
That's right.
Blood and guts and all. Why is now the perfect time to bring Frank Castle back into the Punisher suit?
Well, he's been out of the spotlight for some time now. And with things blowing up at Marvel Studios, we just saw Frank show up in Daredevil Born Again. It seems like everybody's asking questions. Who is this guy? Where's Frank been? And so, he's going to come in blasting. And hopefully people are primed for it, because we sure are as a team.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Ben.
Thank you.
In a 2015 Fantastic Four comic book story written by James Robinson, the Fantastic Four find themselves at their lowest after a devastating loss against an interdimensional invasion of monsters. The group's leader, Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic, discovers a conspiracy behind the team's defeat, one that is led by a villain named the Quiet Man. The Quiet Man claims to not only have been the mastermind behind the FF's recent troubles, but also the one behind every attack against the Fantastic Four since the team's formation. Everything comes to a head in Fantastic Four issue number 645, as the Quiet Man unleashes another larger wave of monsters. The Invisible Woman, Human Torch, and The Thing work to protect the streets of Manhattan from this fresh attack. This gives Mr. Fantastic a chance to confront the Quiet Man for the last time. And as he does so, he delivers the following message about the true heart of the Fantastic Four. The inner strength that my family has, that I've seen grow with us through the years, you forgot to include that in your calculus. If we're down, we rise. If we fail, we try again. If we lose the battle, we win the war. And that is what makes us the Fantastic Four.
Next week on the podcast, writer Delilah S. Dawson shares the latest on the upcoming book, Thor and Loki, Epic Tales from Marvel Mythology.
There is a version of Thor that looks like a horse's denuded skull who is worthy of the hammer and has saved our world.
That's it for today, but if you haven't already, make sure you drop a rating, comment, review, and maybe even tell a friend about it.
This episode was hosted by Langston Belton and me, Victoria Ying, featuring Evan Narcissus and Sade Spence.
Our producers are Jasmine Estrada and Anita Flores.
Thanks to our Senior Manager of Audio Production and Development, Brad Barton, and our Production Manager, Emily Godfrey.
Mixed by Rye Dorsey.
Our theme music is by Ida Akbal.
Our executive producers are Larissa Rosen and Jesse Berger.
As always, thanks for listening. See you next week.